Okay, as we get started today, it'd be nice to see where you all are from. And we have a map. I'm going to enable your ability to mark on the map. And you'll see a little slider along the side of your bar there. And if you pick this one that looks kind of like a sun or star, oh, you all have done this before. Okay. And you can put where you're from. Okay. And if you want to type that in the chat room too, you can do that. Okay. Los Angeles. All right. Berkeley. Oh, we have a couple from California. Okay, Renee. Well, that's one of the learning processes in Atlanta. Okay, and I'm actually in Kansas City area, Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm in the middle of the United States. Kind of nice. So we're all different time zones, I guess. Okay. Okay. The title today. Oh, Parkville, Debbie. Well, I know that well. Motivation for the uphill climb, praise and success. And I went ahead and left the slide in just because I love this. I love the mountains. I like to go up into Colorado every summer and challenge myself to the uphill climb in real life. So, why do some bright students give up or avoid challenges, and others persist even in the face of failure? And this applies to all children, not just the bright ones. But I've found it to be particularly puzzling with the bright students when they give up. If you have, and by the way, if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to type in the chat, and Debbie is our assistant today, and she can kind of help me with that while I'm doing the presentation. Okay. This is really based on the work of Carol Estweck from Stanford University, and she has done a lot of research stemming from the mid-1990s into today, and it's become much more popular in the last 4 years as some of her work has gotten into the mainstream, not just in education, but into the rest of the world, because she wrote a book called Mindsets. And it really is about what you as a person believe about your intelligence. You can have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset, growth mindset, is what we're going to be talking about in the next few slides. Why are they important? Why is it important to even know what kind of mindset you have? Positive emotions facilitate learning. So if you have a positive outlook, that helps. Negative emotions hinder learning. A growth mindset is associated with a more positive outlook and therefore greater motivation, especially when there is a challenge. And you will notice perhaps at the slides at the bottom, some of this is actually taken from Mindset Works, which is a website, and there are some links to this later on. Okay, so what do mindsets predict? Because they can kind of predict a little bit about your motivation and your success. So your desire to learn, the belief in the power of effort, resilience in the face of setbacks, and even achievement over difficult transitions. So what are the mindsets? The fixed mindset, if you hold this belief about your intelligence, you believe that your intelligence is a fixed trait that cannot be changed. And traditionally in education field, we had this belief that you have an IQ score, you're born with it, we can help you learn to the best of your ability, but it really couldn't be changed. Growth mindset, your belief is that your intelligence is a malleable quality and a potential that can be developed. And pardon me for a little gravel voice today, because allergies are a problem here. So today in education, we have learned a lot about intelligence as a field too, and that really it's not such a fixed trait. So we don't want our children to have that kind of belief. So in the 1990s, Dweck and her students did some research. They actually gave a little nonverbal type of IQ test, but they reacted to students in different ways. So, and these were all 5th graders at the time. So one group was praised, wow, that's a really good score, you must be smart at this. The effort praise group, wow, that's a really good score, you must have tried really hard. And the control group just said, wow, that's a really good score. No particular praise at all. So what happened is that they looked at those two groups to see how they reacted to the different kinds of praise. And what they found was that not on that test, but on the next test, they came in again and they said, okay, you can choose this time. Do you want a test that was as difficult as the first one, or would you like an easier test? And those who had been praised for being smart wanted an easier test. Those who had been praised for their effort wanted a more difficult or took the challenging test, which was very interesting. But over time, they repeated this 4 times. And who showed the most decline in performance were students who had, at the beginning, scored very well, but when praised for their intelligence, then their scores went steadily downhill. The growth group were identified as increasing their motivation and being more eager to take on a challenge, to take a risk. Okay, so they looked at some of the effects of this. If the intelligence praise, the praise for being smart, is associated with this fixed mindset. So, okay, I'm smart, but that's all I have. I can't really change it. So the goals for a fixed mindset are continuing to look smart. The goals for someone with a growth mindset, learning. And okay, you can see already this trend, but growth mindset is what we really want. We want people to be ready to learn. After a difficult trial, confidence was low for a fixed mindset, the motivation was low, and the performance decreased. With the growth mindset, confidence was high, motivation was high, and the performance increased. Okay, so after these trials, it really, she was surprised. And these trials have been repeated over and over and over again, different parts of the country, different groups of children, and really come out with the same results. So it's been very interesting to continue to watch this research. So if you have a fixed mindset student, they might believe their goal is looking smart. That's the most important thing to them. They want to maintain that feeling of smart. So we want to show how good I am. And in students, this often shows up. They really pick easier tasks. Sometimes as they get older in those preteen, early teenage years, they don't want to take a risk. They don't want to try something a little more difficult or challenging because it might show up the fact that they're not as smart as everyone believes them to be. Whereas the growth mindset, say, learning is important. It's much more important for me to learn things than to get the best grades or you know, to get the top score or whatever it may be. And a story that I have to share is one of my favorite students that I've had in the past because she taught me a lesson. And I appreciate students who help me learn as well. So Elizabeth was wanting to do a science experiment. And she said, I want to find out about the birds in my backyard. I have a lot of birds come to our bird feeders, but I really want to design an experiment to see which birds will come to the different bird feeders and which foods they prefer. And I told her, I said, that's going to be pretty difficult because you can't observe all the time, and there are going to be a lot of variables. And if you're going to take this to the science fair, they want it pretty clean and very simple and only one variable. She said, I don't care. I want to do it anyway. So she did her experiment. She took it, wrote it all up, took it to the local science fair, and she got a white ribbon, which basically said, yep, you showed up. So I was a little disappointed for her, because I thought, oh gosh, all that work, get a white ribbon. But she bounced in, the next day and said, you know what? Oh, I don't care what ribbon I got. I learned what I wanted to learn. And that's what was important to me. So that taught me a lesson. She was a child with a growth mindset. She was in it for the learning. She didn't care what other people might think about it. So really a great attitude, and that taught me early on that we can look at this in different ways and believe it in different ways. Okay. With different mindsets, what you believe about your own effort is different. So if you have a fixed mindset, believe your intelligence is fixed and cannot change, then when you work hard, it makes you feel not smart. If I have to work hard at this, I'm not very smart. And I work with a lot of very bright children, and it's often very difficult when they finally hit something that's not easy for them, because as young children, everything has come very easily, and perhaps they have not been challenged as much as they should have been. And then they hit a point where something is okay. They either learn to overcome that and put forth more effort, or they just kind of crumble. And so I try to help me get over that. So, yeah, Dijon, you're asking about the age of my students or people that are with us today? Okay, I work with elementary age, so basically 6 to 12-year-olds, 6 to 13-year-olds. We've had a few people come in a little after I introduced myself. So. Okay, the growth mindset students say effort is a positive thing. The harder you work at something, the better you will be. And I think that was definitely Elizabeth's mindset. She worked hard and she learned what she wanted to learn. Okay, what mindsets do if you have a failure, if you have a setback? The fixed mindset, the students who believe they're as smart as they're going to get, would spend less time on a subject, for example, would say, oh, I'm never going to do this again. And sometimes even they'll try to cheat. And this has been documented. So I've had one student who, when he got to middle school, he told his mother, I don't want to take any of those advanced classes. And he was certainly had the intelligence to do it, but he was backing off. And what I know now is that he was really having this fixed mindset where, okay, I'm going to back off and only do things that make me look smart, and so I'll take the easy classes because then I don't have to worry about it. But if you're resilient with a growth mindset, I'd work harder on this class from now on. I would spend more time studying. So we look at it more realistically. I'd work harder, I would do more, I'd put more effort into it, and then I will succeed. So it's really important to success. Yeah, and here we go. Some students were lying about their scores, even on these little tests that they gave during the this experiment, that if they were praised for their intelligence, they were more likely to lie about how well they did on the test when they went to report to their parents or to someone else. So that's kind of a frightening thing. I'm going to skip, oh no, not this one. Okay, the number of problems solved on the actual little test that they gave. So you can see at the beginning, the first trial, the scores were very close together. All three groups pretty much scored the same, so 5 to 5.5 correct problems. But those who were praised for their effort, as they took on even more challenging things, their scores went up. And the control group stayed about the same, but the group that was praised for being smart started going downhill. And that's just after 3 different experiences. Okay, so what happens if we praise and just praise the intelligence or ability? And this can be sports, it can be music, it can be drama, not just academics. So sometimes if we say, you know, you learned that so quickly, you're really smart. And I know as a parent, I've said things like this. I know I hear other parents say it. I think it's pretty common in our world, in our social context, to say things because we want our kids to feel good about themselves. But what happens really is they kind of hear and internalize, oh, if I can't learn something else quickly, then maybe I'm not smart. Okay, you say, oh, you must be the best writer in your class. This is the best story ever. Well, they might be internalizing it as, well, maybe I won't try writing anything else because maybe I won't be as good next time. Or, wow, you got a great score without even studying. You're just brilliant. Okay. Well, you know, it was easy. It might have been easy for them. That might be why they got a good score. So maybe they're thinking, I don't need to study anymore because I am brilliant. I will tell you a story about myself that when I was young, music was my passion, and I was very good at it. And so I got a lot of praise for being very good at my music. And I can remember as a teenager being asked to play, I played the flute and played my flute in church, and everyone would come up to me just gushing with praise. Oh, you were wonderful. Oh, you're so good. Oh, this. I felt really badly about that praise. Just the opposite, I'm sure, of what they intended. That I felt guilty because I thought, oh, that was really easy piece. That wasn't hard to do at all. And I'm getting all this praise. It just was a very uncomfortable feeling. Until I got older and realized that, you know, to them it was something very difficult. They didn't feel like they could have done it. So I began to be more accepting of praise. But I can remember that feeling. So I can understand how our children must feel when they get really praised for something and they really know they didn't put forth the effort. It's an uncomfortable feeling. Okay. So what happens if you have a fixed mindset? You believe that your intelligence is fixed, it's not going to change no matter what you do. You were born with it, that's just what you have. Whether it's, let's say, your sports ability, your musical ability, artistic ability, whatever it might be. When you face a challenge to that ability, you begin to self-doubt. You might feel a little helpless. You might get a little anxious, sad, or even angry. And then over time begin to avoid the risks, withdraw from those challenges, and maybe even be defensive about it. With the growth mindset, believing that your effort makes all the difference, that you can change and get better at what you do, then that challenge brings more you have the self-confidence to engage, get excited about it, feel pride in what you're doing, and put forth a really high effort. You may seek out challenges, and you're willing to persist at things even when they may seem like they're not possible. Okay, so for high achievement, things that we want our children to believe: I can get smarter. I can take on challenges, work hard, use good strategies, and not give up. Effort will make me stronger and better at what I do. And learning is my goal. So, you know, not getting a good score, not winning the game, but learning and growing and getting better at what I do. So the bad news is that everything you do or anyone else does can influence a child's mindset. But the good news is everything you and others do can influence a child's mindset. So it's kind of an interesting proposition there. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a moment. Anyone have any questions? Or at this point, we're going to talk a little more and switch gears a little bit about what happens with too much praise and risk-taking. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, or you can just put it in the chat window. Okay, Renee, yes. Don't feel bad about this. Is the same reaction that I always get when I share this research, and I felt the same way. I was just like this, oh my goodness, what have I done? And my grandchildren were very young at the time. I thought, I've already brained my own children, so I'll try to do better with my grandchildren. And yes, I do have some helpful hints. So next part of, there's a little more theory and background, and then we'll talk about what you can do. So yay. So yeah, don't feel badly. We only do what we think is best for our children. Wow. Okay. So if we tend to overpraise children, and I will tell you that as a teacher, I thought, I wonder what I've been doing in the classroom. I know what I've been doing at home, but what had I been doing in the classroom? So I did a little study of my own to see what kind of praise I was giving children. And so I tried to watch and tried to give more effective praise. What I found out was, okay, I didn't overpraise. I probably underpraise, but I tend to give more constructive feedback, which hopefully has been a good thing over the years. But if we overpraise and do too much of the praise, just you're so good, you're so great, you're so wonderful, students or children might get risk averse, so they don't want to take that chance. They begin to lack autonomy, and if you have a child that is saying, is this okay? Is this what you want? Do you think this is right? Then that may be a sign that they're looking for that praise, that perhaps there's been too much praise or praise of a certain kind. They want to maintain their image, and they may lie or cheat to maintain the image, and they become little praise junkies. And, you know, when you hear the news out in the media, you hear businesses saying, and colleges saying, parents are still calling to help their children at college. And maybe that's because they've been a little bit overpraised. So we have businesses that say they don't know how to do anything for themselves. They ask every 5 minutes, how do I do this? Can I do this? You know, is this okay? Did I do a good job? So that autonomy is missing. And I'm going to skip that slide. So the big conclusion here is that praise for intelligence rather than effort creates vulnerability in high ability, but all students. And it doesn't always show up until they reach a setback or a failure, something goes wrong. And that may happen at a young age, but it may not happen with that. Okay, Judy. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Okay, Judy, we're going to talk about some phrases to use in some ways to try to do that, because I agree. I think that's sad. How do they get over that? First of all, effort. Emphasizing effort gives the child a variable they can control. They come to see themselves in control of their success, and but if, you know, on the other hand, just emphasizing their ability or an intelligence takes it out of their control. It provides no good recipe for how they respond to a failure or setback. Okay, so there's a large body of research on effort that goes back to the early 70s. That's pretty interesting too, if anybody wants more information. But the benefits of effort are we learn from our mistakes. And I am really thrilled in our culture that this is becoming more acceptable. We learn from mistakes. And I think often as parents even, I know teachers do this, but as parents, we often don't model how we make mistakes and overcome them and how we deal with them. And yeah, they're an opportunity to learn. If you don't make mistakes, you're probably not going to learn very much. You're not going to do much in this world at all. So how to help our children to do that as well. How to accept that constructive criticism, that it's not cutting you to the quick, it's really something that's helping you to grow. How to apply new strategies, persevere, keep going even when it's tough, to be willing to ask questions. And I know that was something when I was young, I really didn't want to raise my hand and ask questions. And I think that's a setback to a lot of kids. And taking reasonable risks. And we're not talking about, you know, like, what is that new, those flight suits where you can fly through buildings? But no, okay, nothing like that, but just reasonable kinds of risks. Sylvia Rem has worked with students who are not living up to their potential for a very, very long time. She said the surest path to high self-esteem is to be successful at something when perceived would be difficult. Each time we steal a student's struggle, we steal the opportunity for them to build self-confidence. They must learn to do difficult things to feel good about themselves. And that, I go back to my flute playing about that, because I did perceive it as a success because it wasn't difficult for me. So we have to have those challenges built in there. Okay, so how do we frame the praise or put the situation in front of them? Anytime there's something new, we say it's an opportunity. Now, we don't have to say it's a challenge, but we can. For some students, that's fine, but an opportunity. And we want risks to be taken in a safe way. And each of us has our strength areas. So if you have a child that's kind of averse to taking risks, start with a strength area. What's something they're already good at, and encourage them to take that opportunity to do something a little more challenging with it. So in the world of music, I will take risks. But in other areas of my life, physical challenges, I'm not an athlete. So no, I'm not going to do a marathon. That would be really, really stupid, actually. So anyway, you have to find the area where they're a little bit comfortable and then push them a little and start there. Still want to keep high expectations, but support them along the way. And make sure that the goals you're establishing are learning goals, that this is about learning something new, trying something new, but the learning is what is important. Okay, so when we look at ways to encourage a growth mindset, let's say they did succeed and they didn't have to put a lot of effort into it. Well, that's great. You do know that. Now we need to find something a bit more challenging to help you grow. Or your skills, you've got the skills for this already. I'm sorry I wasted your time. Let's try something a little more difficult. If they used effort, really reward that effort. Praise the effort. I'm so proud of the effort you put forth. Congratulations. You used those great strategies. If there's a failure, things didn't work out, or they're disappointed, well, you didn't do as well as you really wanted to, but let's learn from this, see what we can do next. Maybe analyze it, break it down. What parts did you do well? What parts were difficult? Let's see what we can do about that. Or were you really prepared? Did you really prepare to do this well, or could we have done things differently? Okay, this is something I know I was guilty of as a parent. It's confusing praise with encouragement because kids see through the manipulation when you're praising them. And that would be something like, I see you made your bed this morning. good for you. Now I bet you can do it every day. So it's kind of praising and encouraging and manipulating all at the same time. It's better to separate those things out, to say, good job, you put forth the effort to make that bed this morning. I'm really proud of you, and leave it at that. Another interesting sidelight is only children under age 7 take praise at face value. And what that means is that children older than 7, and very bright children perhaps long before the age of 7, figure out if you're manipulating them. So if you're praising them just to try to get them to do a better job, they see through it. In fact, they did a study with some school children, and the results were kind of interesting. So if a teacher really lays on the praise for a student, the other students kind of go, loser, they really need a lot of praise, they must not be doing a very good job. Whereas if the teacher was saying to the student, oh, you can do better, let's put a little more effort into this, they go, oh, that's the kid that's really smart. That was really interesting. Okay, and mistakes. Like I said, I'm so glad to see this coming in our culture. Mistakes are expected, they're valuable. I'm glad I made that mistake because I learned this. And yeah, help model those mistakes and share them. Failure to live up to one's potential may be associated with an inability to take realistic risks. You know, you can't send a kid off to college unless they're willing to make a few realistic risks. Life is full of risks. Trying out for a team, you know, playing in a group or singing in a group, all of those things are risks, but they pay off big time, or they don't. And you say, well, we learned that that's not something we want to try again. With risk-taking comes increased confidence, even sometimes if it's not a positive experience, but you survived it. You develop skills for managing fears. And I have had a few students in the past that were really very overprotected. And then when something happens, they don't know how to deal with you know, managing their fears or managing their failures. They really need help. They need practice in doing that. They need practice in decision making. They need those opportunities just to grow. Okay, Debbie. Risk-taking, if we're in that environment, and this is an environment I always try to set up in my own classroom. Mistakes are opportunities. The goals are what is important. How you get to the goal may be different for every person. We seek change. Change is okay. We can be playful. Not everything has to be dead serious. Really expecting people to set their own goals. How do you want to get from here to there? And choose your own risks, and I kind of talked about that earlier. Okay. This one was startling to me. Dr. Robert Cloninger actually examined brains, and he found that our brains actually change with effort and persistence, that different centers light up if you're willing to persist in a task, that we actually, like some of the brain areas no longer function if you haven't learned, say, delayed gratification, so you're not able to wait for something to happen, that part of the brain doesn't function well anymore. So it's really important, you know, this whole effort and persistence thing, it actually changes your brain. Okay, and again, if you try to protect children from risks or hard work, they really need that experience of the tension and the stress that comes from those experiences, or they don't know how to deal with it when they get older, simply. Okay, I want to show you a video, so hopefully you will be able to follow me to the web here. I like to use people in culture that students recognize that they might look up to. And this is actually from a commercial, a Nike commercial, but I think it's very powerful. On my computer, this comes to be pretty loud, so you might be ready. Okay. Okay. I really enjoy. I watch that over and over again, and it kind of gives me chills. And it's so important, I think, for children to hear that it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay not to do things perfectly. Okay, so what do we do? How do we get this praise right? We can be specific. So this very general praise is often what gets us into trouble. So when my granddaughter was 3, she wanted to go sit in big church with her papa. And you know, we were a little concerned, but she did an amazing job. And I had talked to him about this whole praise thing too. So, oh, okay. Oh, Renee, I'm so sorry. Okay, Renee's on her iPad, so she couldn't get the video. Well, now we know. Okay, but you can go to YouTube, and if you just search for Michael Jordan failure, it's a short Nike commercial where he says how he has been relied on to make the winning shot this many times. It's a lot of statistics, this many times, and failed, the winning game shot and failed. And you know, but he says, I failed over and over again, but that's why I'm a success. So it's just a cool little thing to show our children. Okay, so back to praise primer. Be specific. So so granddaughter's at church. She does a really nice job, sits quietly through the whole thing, and afterwards, you know, he said, wow. He didn't say, wow, you were really good at church today, because that doesn't help her identify what it is that she did well. So he said, wow, you sat quietly through the whole service. So it's just that little bit of a tweak. If you say to some, you know, got a child doing this beautiful artwork, and you say, wow, you're a great artist. No, probably not a good idea. But you know, instead say, oh, I love the colors you chose to use and how they work together. So something specific about it. Be sincere. They see that underlying fakeness if you aren't sincere about it. So if it's not something you think deserves praise, just say, oh, I love you. And don't worry about the actual event. Okay. Praise the process, not the person. So again, say, oh, you are a great musician. That's praising the person instead of the process of you created some great music. So it's just this little switch. You can also focus on praising strategies that they're using. So wow, I see that you really were kind of thinking backwards here to figure out how to start this problem, or a decision that's been made. I see you were thinking about how to do this, and also the work accomplished, not necessarily, it may not be the end of the line, but I see that you've made this much progress. You know, good job on making this much progress on this particular piece of work. Okay, I kind of made up this little acronym to help me remember cells. So praise. So praise, being willing to take a challenge. You know, I see you, you know, good for you. You tried something that I know was a little difficult for you, but you did it, or you persisted in doing it. That effort that you put into something, whether it's successful or not. And the learning, okay, I see, you know, wow, I see you learned something new today. The strategies again to get there. So Judy, I don't know if that helps with your disabilities, the learning disability students, but that especially that challenge and praise for taking on a challenge and even little bits of it and the effort they're putting into it and what they've learned so far. I think it's hard a lot of times for children to see what they've learned. And when I taught first grade, which is a real experience for anyone, at the end of the year, I told them they had a very hard test to see what they'd learned this year and if they were ready to go on. And all I did was like the first week's work we did together. So their first spelling list, their first page of math and all of that. And they just looked at me like I was crazy because they're going, wow, this is so easy. And I said, well, yeah, they don't see how far they've come until they can have a chance to look back. So sometimes it's that looking back, seeing how much you've grown, seeing where the effort has taken you. Okay, rewarding the effort. Not perfection, like say, reward the effort even if it's a failure, that's okay. Progress toward a goal, persistence. Anytime they stick to it, reward that. Although some children can take things to an extreme, and if they're spending a lot of time, kind of that perfectionistic, a lot of time on something that isn't worth the time invested, they then need to break it down and say, okay, what's really important? What do I put all my effort into? And maybe need to kind of learn to rate themselves. We had a little girl who was spending hours copying her spelling words 3 times each, which she shouldn't even have been doing, but it was her homework, and because it wasn't perfect or the words weren't lined up perfectly. And so we really had to help her learn to evaluate what's worth your time and what's not, and try to work on that. Acknowledge the learning, not the work you're doing, but the learning coming from it, and the time you've invested in it, and that prioritize what you're doing. So key takeaways: provide the feedback, things to remember. Okay, praise the process, not the person. Focus on things they can control, and avoid praising in general terms, especially the talent, the intelligence, the easy successes. Emphasize the individual progress they've made, not necessarily how they compare to others. And the learning goals. It's not to perform well, but to learn well. Mistakes are important, and taking risks is a way to grow. Okay, I want to move to another slide here because you're going to have it. I created a live binder, and if you don't know what a live binder is, I strongly suggest you go to the live binder, livebinders.com, which you'll see there. You can create these, your children can create these. They're like a 3-ring binder online, and you can select different web pages. I use them for all kinds of things, but I'm a clutterer, so when I need to remember where things are, I'll put them in a live binder, and I think I have about 12 of these live binders now. Thank you, Debbie. And on different topics, so they're really handy. But you can, with children, things that they're researching or learning about, they can save web pages in their live binder. You have tabs just like a real binder. So it's a really cool tool to use. It's free. And anyway, I've put a lot of other resources about this topic in the live binder. And there's some videos, some other things. I think some of the videos are really helpful. There's a book called, Nurture Shock. Nurture Shock by Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman, and there's some video by them as well that has a whole chapter in it about the mindsets. And they've kind of been on this trail too, and Poe Bronson especially talks about as a parent how, he's tried to change his students. So it's kind of nice. You're not alone. So at this point I want to stop, and if there are any questions or things you want to, ask or share with us, this would be the time. Okay. Oh, thank you, Renee. I try. I've been doing this presentation for a while, and like I said, a lot of parents copy the links to the chat room. Okay, which links? Taking that. If you hover over my name, you'll find some information about me, and hopefully, so you could email me if you want more information. Yes, Renee?
I'm going to try using my mic. Hopefully you can hear me.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily about the presentation, but I just wanted to say I wanted to experiment this type of format on my iPad to see what it was like, and I wanted to tell you that of all of the sessions that I've been to, yours has used the most resources in this format, and I love it. And I know that I wasn't able to see the video, but I just want to encourage you to just thank you so much for making it really super interesting for a participant to just see the richness of what we have available. And thanks, you did a great job.
Okay. Thank you, Renee. I always like feedback, and it's hard at this kind of presentation sometimes to get that feedback because I can't see your faces. And I'm kind of glad you can't see my room right now, but it's okay. Oh, thank you, Redwood Gal. That's great. What I was going to say is that if you do go to the website, you will find a copy of this presentation. I can type it into the chat room if you like. And you'll see different presentation pages, and there are a lot of presentations on there to look through, but it should be there. Another website, is my Weebly website. There are presentations posted there as well. The other thing, Weebly is a free website, so if your children want to create their own websites, Weebly is a great tool to do. It's pretty easy, drag and drop kind of things, and a lot of resources. So a lot of my students are loving creating this. So, okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I don't think it will catch out, but I don't know on your iPad what will happen. So, okay. Well, I really do appreciate you all coming today. Hope you've learned something that will be useful to you. So, again, thank you very much, and thank you, Diane, for being my helper here today.
Thanks, everyone, for attending. If we can ask you to log out unless you have some other questions, and we'll get this room prepared for the next person. Thanks. Wendy, do you want to go ahead and stop the recording?
Okay. Oh, yes, we can do that. Sorry. I forget it's going up there.